Hey everyone, welcome to this week's Azure Infrastructure Update. It's the 27th of February and a small but pretty cool set of updates this week. As always, this is useful. Please go ahead and like and subscribe and hit that bell icon to get notified of new videos. As always, we have the chapters down the bottom of the video so you can jump to a specific one if there's one you care more about than the others. New videos this week. I created a video all about the new Azure AD cross-tenant access settings. This is phenomenal when I think about those guest users with B2B, either people from my organization being guests in other organizations, and I can now control that, or people from other organizations being guests in mine. And I can now trust claims made from the guests around, hey, it's done a strong authentication, hey, it's a compliant device, and more. So I go into all of that. Then I talked about the new alert processing rules that I talked about in last week's update that have now gone GA and let me automate actions or suppress actions at a very big scale. What's new? So on the compute side, now WordPress on App Service has had a number of enhancements, really about performance. This runs on Linux. It has improved caching, has better image compression. It's got a much easier set of configuration steps now, and it's available in a whole set of different app service plans and the MySQL flexible server instance for the database, depending on the purpose, on the potential scale. So it ranges from really small burstable VMs up to bigger ones for larger scale deployments. On the networking side, App Gateway Mutual Authentication has gone GA. So we think about App Gateway as that layer 7 regional balancing solution. It's layer 7, so it understands things like HTTP, HTTPS, WebSockets. And because it's layer 7, I can do SSL offload, URL rewrite, header rewrite, and much more. Now, the whole point about mutual authentication is ordinarily the App Gateway has a cert. The client talking to it can use the certificate to validate, hey, that really is the service I'm trying to talk to. Mutual authentication is we can also validate the client. That becomes a bigger deal when we think about zero trust. It might be IoT devices, who know what, but I want to validate, well, that client really should be talking to me. They are who they say they are. So the client has a certificate as well. And what we essentially do is we import into App Gateway that certificate chain. So we think about the root, the interim signing, certificate authorities. We bring that into App Gateway, and there can be multiple sets of those so that now it can check that client certificate and make sure, hey, this really is valid. And we configure that as part of the SSL profile. I can also do it at a per listener level. And you may say, well, what about the back-end application? What if that wants to see the client certificate? So one of the nice things this does is in a set of variables, the details of that client certificate given to App Gateway are actually sent back. Like the entire content of the client cert as a PEM format is sent in one of these variables. But also there's things about, hey, the signing, all of the different details, the serial number and more, they are sent to that backend service. This is only available in the standard v2, the WAF v2 SKUs. On the storage side, so Azure NetApp Files, remember that Azure first-party service using NetApp filers, App Consistent Snapshot v5.1 is now in preview. This was all about the idea of being able to give me app consistent backups via snapshots of different types of databases, for example, SAP HANA in a Linux environment. So what they've added is now Oracle database support, I think version 12 and later, running on Oracle Linux. It also adds support for the backint coexistence. So backint is that SAP HANA native streaming backup capability. And normally that backend will block any other type of backup. So what this now does is when I do that snapshot backup, it will disable backend, create the app consistent snapshot, and then re-enable backend. So it enables me to use another backup technology with backend still being configured. Also, there's run before and run after capabilities where I can run some shell commands before and after that snapshot. And so just a bunch of nice new features there. This works with Azure NetApp Files, Bare Metal, and Azure Managed Disk. Also, Azure NetApp Files is now GA in Australia Central 2. And as part of that, there's a new cross-region pair between Australia Central and Australia Central 2. So I can get that cross-region replication. I can now have multiple daily Azure file backups. So this has gone GA. So ordinarily we could get a backup a day. Now I can actually go down to the granularity of down to every 4 hours. So if we take a quick look at that, so if I was to jump over to the portal, if I just go and look at Backup Center, I'll go and look at my backup policies. I'll add a new one. If we pick now Azure Files, and I'll just pick a Vault super quick, doesn't matter which one. What we can now see is in the frequency, ordinarily it's daily. So we have this daily frequency, but I can change it to hourly. And then that minimum duration, I can actually have 4 hours. So it could be 4, 6, 8, or 12. So my recovery point objective could now go all the way down to 4 hours if that's what I required. So that is now GA. Miscellaneous. Cost management now has anomaly detection. So if we jump over, it's actually kind of interesting to go and look at. So what we can now see is if I just go and pick something, so I will pick, for example, resource groups, we actually see this, hey look, no anomalies detected. It's not seeing anything strange out of the usual for our spending patterns. But if there was, we could go and click into them and actually see, hey, there were these anomalies about what we're seeing with the cost. Now, obviously in my very boring subscription, I'm not seeing very much. But in a more production environment, this is a really nice thing to be able to go and see. Enterprise Agreement Management is now in Azure Cost Management. So for a long time, there's been this separate EA portal where I would go and configure departments, accounts, create subscriptions. That experience was always kind of going away. Now it's actually available in Azure Cost Management. Now I don't have access to one of these, but if we go and look at the documentation, it really does walk through. So we pick a billing scope. Once we pick a billing scope, we can see details about the enrollment, but then we can go and add administrators. I can go and create departments. I can go and create accounts. And then I can actually go and create subscriptions. So all of these various things I can actually now do through the regular Azure Cost Management portal. So that's now GA as well. Azure Monitor Logs has a number of new things. So there were a whole bunch of various updates. They have these new data collection rules for custom data collection and ingestion. I can send data from pretty much any source to built-in tables in Log Analytics Workspace or custom tables using REST APIs to a data collection endpoint. As part of those data collection rules, I can filter the data, I can modify the data. So using the regular KQL, those Kusto query language that we leverage, I can project what I want to put into the tables. So I could transform, I could filter the data. There's a new basic log type of table available. Imagine I just have massive amounts of very verbose, high volume data. And obviously there's a certain dollar cost associated with Log Analytics Workspace. Well, maybe I just need to have that data for a fairly short period of time. I don't need to have that same set of rich analytics available. Well, I can now have these basic logs where I pay less money, but only get a subset of the query language available. And I think that's up to 8 days it can retain in those types of tables. There's a new long-term retention, up to 7 years past the regular 2 years, where once again, when I archive the data, I'm keeping it, but I need to use a search job or restore it to actually then run queries against the data. But it's giving me that long-term retention. 7 years is very popular in like financial institutions. So I can now put it into this archive as part of my log analytics workspace. And then I said search jobs. That's this new asynchronous query that can bring records into a new search table for further analysis. There's a new custom retention for Azure activity and usage. So I talked about, I set a certain retention for my log analytics workspace, and that applies to everything, up to 2 years, 730 days. Well, for Azure activity, i.e. the activity log of all the things happening on the control plane of Azure, and the usage log, that hourly usage data for each table in the workspace, I can now specify a different retention period from that of the workspace. Maybe I want to keep that stuff for longer compared to everything else. And data export has gone GA. This is that continuous export capability. So as data comes into log analytics, as part of that data ingestion pipeline, I can now send it in near real time to an event hub or to a storage account. The storage account stores it in 5-minute chunks, but that is now GA. I specify it at a table level. I can't do filtering within what it sends. And even if a table I pick is not currently supported, I can still select it. And then when it is supported in the future, then that continuous export will start kicking in and sending that data. And that is it. So those are the updates for this week. I appreciate you watching as always. I hope it's useful. And until the next video, take care.